Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Ooh. Okay. So, nobody's here for the first time, right? Amy? Okay, welcome. So
Hi,
everybody else is...
thank you.
Huh?
Yes.
Pardon?
I said hi, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. So all these other people have come back for more, so it can't be that bad, I guess. Unless there's something wrong with them. Okay, so we normally start with 2 or 3 minutes of quiet meditation on the breath. So let's just do that, try and center our minds. So, Amy, we just sit in our best meditation posture, find our breath where it goes out and comes in through our nostrils, and we direct our concentration there and try and keep it there as long as we can. And whenever we notice that our concentration has gone off the breath, following some thought or other, we just drop the thought and come straight back to the breath. Okay, thank you. So now let's generate our motivation for this evening's session. Thinking the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. That means I have to complete the path to enlightenment. I have to study, think about, meditate on, and realize every step on that lengthy path to enlightenment. And since there are many steps and and there's a long way to go, I need to develop a regular and steady practice. Therefore, I'm going to participate in this session tonight on establishing the daily practice. So, establishing a daily practice in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay, thank you. So in the information about these classes, there's some references. There's some, days 4 to 6 of liberation in the palm of your hand. It talks about the preliminary practices or preparatory rights. Setting up for practice. So we'll look at that, and there's a link to setting up an altar. So you can, in the material, there's a link, so you can download that PDF if you like, and then there's another link to Lama Zopa Rinpoche's daily practice, recommended daily practice. So let me just find that. Anyway, we're not going to get to that tonight. Oh, I see. Passcode is there. I'm one of the older people who doesn't do technology well. Yeah, the method to transform a suffering life into happiness. So we'll get to that sooner or later. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for being here. If you weren't here, I wouldn't be here. And there's a reason that we're here. And I think it's just we're looking for happiness and trying to avoid suffering. If you really come down to it, that's probably why most of us are here. And there's nothing wrong with that, because the wish for happiness and the avoidance of suffering is innate in every sentient being's mind. So as we know, there are two kinds of beings with mind. There are enlightened beings and there are sentient beings. So the enlightened beings, the Buddhas, are Buddhas. They weren't always Buddhas. They were once sentient beings, but they followed the path to enlightenment and became enlightened. The rest of us are sentient beings. We haven't finished following the path, so we're still sentient beings. And the difference between sentient beings and enlightened beings is essentially ignorance. The enlightened beings have no ignorance in their mind at all, and sentient beings have a certain degree of ignorance. It can be a little or it can be a lot. But so among sentient beings, there are two kinds. Again, there are those who are out of cyclic existence, who've attained liberation from cyclic existence, and there are those who are still stuck in cyclic existence, and that's probably who we are. I hope I'm not shortchanging anybody here, but probably you wouldn't be here if you had transcended cyclic existence. So cyclic existence is kind of what it sounds like. It's the wheel of life. There are six different realms, 3 lower realms and 3 upper realms. The lower realms are the hell realm, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm. And the upper realms are the human realms and the gods and the demigod realms. One of the main differences between the upper and lower realms is happiness and suffering, that in the lower realms, there's vastly more suffering than in the upper realms. And in the upper realms, there's relatively more happiness than there is in the lower realms. But sentient beings cycle from one realm to another, and that's been going on. And we've been cycling through the different 6 realms of cyclic existence since beginningless time. So that, beginningless time, it's a really long time. It's probably nothing longer than that. So the nature of cyclic existence, whether you're in the upper realms or the lower realms, the nature is suffering. Because even the happinesses that we experience in the upper realms aren't true happiness, aren't real happiness. They're just very fleeting experiences. But anyway, from our point of view, what we're always trying to find is a certain degree of happiness. But then again, if we look at the kind of happiness that we'd like, I think consciously we probably don't assent to it because it's so unlikely. But if we really look, we'd like to be happy all the time. Of course, some people are going to say, no, I don't want to be happy all the time. If I didn't have some suffering in my life, I wouldn't appreciate the happiness I have. So right there, that would indicate that happiness, that the person who says that is seeking, actually depends on suffering. The people need the contrast. But actually there is a state of perfect happiness, everlasting happiness. And that's what we achieve when we escape from cyclic existence. And that's, a large part of the practice and the path. But no matter what level of happiness, what kind of happiness we're looking for, we need, if we want to experience that, we need to create the cause. And the cause is practicing Dharma, practicing. So Dharma is a Sanskrit word. Dharma is what Buddhists call the teachings of the Buddha. The literal meaning of Dharma is that which holds you out of, keeps you out of suffering, holds you up. You know, suffering is down there. The Dharma keeps you up out of it. So the main thing that determines whether we're going to experience happiness or not is the motivation for the things we do, the actions of our body, our speech, and our mind. So anyway, I think most of you have heard me talk about this several times, but anyway. In terms of negative actions, actions that don't lead to happiness, that lead to suffering, that lead to rebirth in the lower realms, or the experience of suffering in the upper realms, those are actions motivated by ignorance, attachment, and aversion, which the Buddha called the three poisonous minds, or, you know, they're three of the three main delusions, you know, wrong ways of thinking. And the fundamental ignorance, which is the, you know, root cause of all the suffering that we experience, is the wrong conception of the self. You know, the belief that I am self-existent, this feeling that within us, and, you know, we generally feel the I here in our chest, feeling there's this kind of real I, a solid I, that we feel, you know, if you said, yesterday I did this, you know, tomorrow I'm going to do that, today I did this. There's this I that we mention like that. It seems to be some kind of unchanging, permanent entity within us. Permanent, self-sufficient, self-existent, independent, not dependent on causes and conditions. Something that's always there and has been with us throughout our whole life and will remain with us unchanging until we die. So that's called ignorance, that's called a delusion, because there's no such thing. No matter how strongly we feel it, and that's really what drives our whole life. You know, we're working for this I, for this self, but it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist as we perceive it, or as we conceive it to exist. So actually, there are two kinds of wrong conception of the self. There's the innate one that I'm talking about, this one that we were born with and that we always feel. There's also an intellectual one, you know, certain philosophies that, you know, talk about your immortal soul. And, you know, I don't know much about other theology of other religions, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, but I think most of them postulate some kind of soul, permanent entity within us, and maybe that's the thing that goes to heaven or hell. Anyway, from the Buddhist point of view, there's no such thing. And the main one we're interested in anyway is this innate one, the one that we were born with, and the one that has been within us since beginningless time. So as I said, you know, since our mind is beginningless. And since beginningless time, we've had this ignorance, this wrong conception of the self. And that's why we're still in cyclic existence. And because it's on the basis of this self, and when you couple that with this, our innate wish to be happy, we develop attachment. Because we've created positive actions in the past, as we go about our life from when we're very little to when we're very old, because we've created positive actions in the past, positive karma, we've created the causes of happiness in the past, we experience happinesses of one kind or another, these temporary happinesses that I mentioned before, the ones that we always strive for. So when we experience these small happinesses, for example, if we're given some food, piece of chocolate cake, and we take a bite and we like it, and we experience a pleasant sensation, good feeling. So automatically our mind believes that good feeling, that happiness, that pleasure that we're experiencing comes from the cake. The cake is the main cause of that experience. And actually that's not so. But nevertheless, that's what we feel, and we get attached to that cake, and somehow in our mind registers chocolate cake, good. Chocolate cake, cause of happiness. Must remember that next time I see chocolate cake, I'll have some. Actually, what really happened was, we created the cause earlier in this life or in some previous life to experience that pleasure with the chocolate cake. So that the principal cause, the chocolate cake played its part, but the principal cause of that experience of happiness was the karma, the positive imprint that we created previously. And, the chocolate cake just caused that to ripen into experience of pleasure. So also that feeling arose, and our mind labeled it pleasure somehow, and, good, and imbued it with sort of positive qualities, the experience and the cake. And that sort of, and then created the attachment to the cake and the wish to get more, if not right away, fairly soon after. Remember when I was when I got in Nepal, the few months after I got there, and after I'd done my first meditation course with Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, at our monastery near Kathmandu, Kopan. So the Kopan monastery is, if you see Bob there, if you imagine Bob's head is the Kopan Gompa, the monastery, and then behind it there's the stupa. So behind Kopan monastery, there's this hill. There's a couple of trees growing on top of that hill. Someone had, so I'd been there for a few months, and I don't know about now, but that was nearly 50 years ago. It was very hard to get chocolate good chocolate in India and Nepal, but someone had brought me some. So, you know, there are a bunch of other Westerners around, but I was given this chocolate and I really didn't want to share it. So, so I snuck off with my chocolate around the back of the hill and climbed to the top of the hill. And I got my chocolate. And then, as often happens in India and Nepal, you know, you think you're alone, then all of a sudden people manifest. It's really hard to get away from people sometimes there. It's
Nick, are you talking?
What?
Yes, we're hearing you pretty well. Karen, maybe you're having trouble with your speaker?
Can everybody else hear him?
I've been going for about how long? Half an hour or something. I'll start again. I'm going to.
I think you're okay, Nick.
Yeah, I just.
But I think it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Leave Karen to figure it out. So I snuck off the top of the hill with this chocolate, and I was about to eat some, and then these like 3 Nepali kids appeared over the hill, and they stood there looking at me, you know, as kids do there, and so I thought, oh my God, you know, I'm going to have to share this chocolate now. I can't, you know. So I broke off a couple of bits and gave it to the kids, and they were watching me eating it. So, you know, they started to eat it and they spat it out. It was like it was the most vile thing they'd ever put in their mouth. So there was a little lesson there. Obviously, they hadn't created the karma to enjoy chocolate, or, you know, whatever the experience they were having, they didn't label it as pleasant. Clearly, they labeled it as unpleasant. So that really proved that the goodness of the chocolate isn't in the chocolate, it's definitely in the mind. So, you know, and in 2 ways. You know, one is that you've created the cause, the karma, to experience pleasure with this object, and the other is that you're having an experience and your mind labels that pleasant. So what I was doing there with the chocolate was, you know, I was selfish and greedy and attached to it, and eating it with attachment, eating it with really only one thought in my mind: to experience pleasure now. You know, I didn't have any thought beyond, certainly beyond this life. And that's really the definition of a negative action, one that's motivated solely by the wish for pleasure and comfort and happiness in this life alone. So that's just the normal way people are. And that's how pretty much everybody we know behaves. And you know, if you start telling people, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't do things motivated by the wish for success or happiness or pleasure or, you know, good things in this life alone. You know, if you really want to experience the result of happiness, that's not the motivation you need. What you need is a motivation to experience happiness and pleasure beyond this life. So, you know, you tell people that, most people are going to think you're silly, you know, or crazy, because most people think that this life is the only one we have. You only live once. How often you hear that? So, you know, make the most of it. But from a Buddhist point of view, not only are our previous lives beginningless, our future lives are endless. So we're going to, our mind is going to last forever. And what changes is its state, So, really it's up to us. Are all our future lives going to be here in cyclic existence, just going from suffering to suffering to suffering? Or is there a way out? Is there a way to reach this permanent state of happiness, everlasting happiness that the Buddha taught exists? So, as I said before, there are two kinds of sentient beings. There are those within cyclic existence, and there are those who've escaped from cyclic existence by realizing the false nature of the self-existent I, this innate feeling of the permanent self, who've seen through that, transcended it, and realized the ultimate nature of their own mind, and through that attained liberation from cyclic existence, or nirvana. Nirvana is a Sanskrit word, and the person becomes an arhat. In Sanskrit, in Tibetan, it's called a dachompa, which literally means a foe destroyer, or destroyer of the enemy. And the enemy that's destroyed is ignorance. The principal ignorance being that of the way in which the self exists. So in terms of creating the cause, so we want to be happy, and ideally we'd like to be everlastingly happy. And in terms of everlasting happiness, there are actually two levels. There is this level of happiness that we attain by becoming free from cyclic existence, by attaining nirvana, transcending our ego, the self-exist, the wrong conception of that I am self-existent. So that's one level of everlasting happiness. But there's a greater level of everlasting happiness, and that's what we call enlightenment or Buddhahood. So there's a big difference between an arhat, a foe destroyer, someone who's simply taken themselves out of cyclic existence. I say only or merely, but it's an incredible achievement. We've been in cyclic existence under the control of ignorance and the other delusions since beginningless time. So to overcome that is an incredible achievement, but still, really, there's only one sentient being that mainly benefits from that, and that's oneself. All the other infinite sentient beings don't get much benefit from, our individual liberation. So the greater state of happiness is that of enlightenment. So there's a big difference between the two. So in order to experience happiness of any kind within cyclic existence or beyond it, then we have to create positive actions. So there are three levels of positive action or positive motivation, and they are all actions done seeking benefit beyond this life. I mean, these actions can result in happiness in this life as kind of as a side effect, but the motivation should be at least seeking in our next life, seeking freedom from rebirth in the lower realms. So if we do actions, negative actions, aimed simply at gaining happiness in this life, then we're creating negative karma and the cause to experience rebirth in the lower realms and all the other kind of sufferings that life can bring in the lower realms or even in the upper realms. So the lowest level of positive action is thinking, well, I understand that it's really terrible to be in the hells, the hungry ghosts, the animal realms, so I must do, I'm going to do this action, whether it's, studying Dharma or making offerings or doing prostrations or so many other actions. I'm going to do it at least in order to get a better life in cyclic existence, not to be reborn in the lower realms. So that's a much better result than creating negative karma, doing actions for this life only, and then experiencing suffering results of that. Much better to do this low-level positive action, but still, it's not particularly great because here we are, we're human. This life that we're experiencing now is the result of positive karma, a lot of positive karma, actually. Several of our previous lives worked very hard practicing Dharma, creating merit, creating positive karma in order to bring about this life that we're enjoying now. Not that we're aware of it, but that's the fact. And all the happinesses we experience in this life, apart from having this life itself, are also the result of positive actions created in our previous lives, mostly in our previous lives. It's unlikely that in this life, before we met the Dharma anyway, that we created any positive actions at all, because we didn't know about it. And we didn't believe there were future lives. But even though this life and a lot of its attributes are the result of positive karma, we still experience a lot of suffering in this life. I mean, life in the womb is suffering. The birth process is suffering. Kids come out crying. I don't know, I've never heard of a baby coming out laughing. It's possible, I guess. In my medical training, I delivered 20 babies, none of them were laughing, nor were their mothers. So then we experience all kinds of negative, we have all kinds of negative experiences. We get sick, we fall over, we injure ourselves, we get punished. Gradually we age, we get sick, and we die, none of which we want. It's all considered negative or suffering. We don't get what we want. When we do get what we want, we lose it, and then we meet all kinds of disagreeable circumstances, and we may be born in terrible, dangerous places. We may get attacked by different people or animals, or there's so many sufferings in this life. So to simply aim for a life rebirth like this, which does necessitate creating positive karma, it's, as I always say, it's like fighting hard to get the best cell in the prison. So you might get a nice cell, but you're still in prison. And eventually you're going to die and then get reborn in the lower realms. It'll be a long time before you can come up again into the upper realms. So that's not a particularly worthwhile goal, simply to to look for better future lives in cyclic existence. Much better goal, a higher goal, is to attain liberation from cyclic existence altogether. But that has shortcomings in that it's kind of somewhat selfish and cruel, because in order to attain that, we depend so much on the kindness of others in so many different ways. And to seek just our own happiness, everlasting happiness and freedom, and sort of forget about the others, it's selfish. Even though it's an amazing achievement, it's still, relatively speaking, selfish. And again, it's not of that, in the big picture, not that great of a benefit, in that out of countless infinite sentient beings, really only one has benefited. So still, that's the intermediate level of motivation. But the great level of motivation, as we tried to motivate at the beginning, is to do whatever we do to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, to become a fully enlightened being, because it's only as an enlightened being that we can lead all beings to that level of mind. And that is the ultimate level of happiness. There's no happiness beyond that, and that really is the completion of one's own purpose, the fulfillment of one's own purpose. And from that, one can then help all other sentient beings fulfill their own purpose. So from the Mahayana point of view, that's really the only worthwhile goal, setting our mind on. And so that's, all these teachings that we study are really aimed at helping us attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And so we need to try to motivate our actions, all our actions, especially our Dharma actions, but all our actions really, with that mind that says, I want to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And, as you know, that mind is called bodhicitta. Bodhi, B-O-D-H-I, Bodhi, awakening, Cheetah, C-I-T-T-A or C-H-I-T-T-A, Cheetah, mind. So the mind of awakening, the awakening mind. And those who realize bodhicitta are called bodhisattvas. A sattva is a being. So they're bodhisattvas. They're beings on the way to full awakening, the awakening of Buddha. Buddha and Bodhi comes from the same Sanskrit root of awakening. So whenever we set out to do something with the aim of being happy, we really need to make sure that our motivation is positive. Otherwise, we definitely will not get a good result. So let me just look at Pabonka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. So in terms of setting up a daily practice, it would be nice, it's ideal if, of course, our whole life, our life is so short that we really need to try to make everything we do a Dharma practice, at least by doing it with the bodhicitta motivation. And there's this teaching that Lama Zopa Rinpoche, our teacher, has clearly delineated. He calls it bodhicitta mindfulness. So we hear about mindfulness a lot these days, and I'm not exactly sure what they teach there. There's mindfulness of the breath, and mindfulness of the actions. Maybe you're thinking. Well, they do retreats, and you kind of register what you're doing. Oh, I'm eating, I'm walking, and then you feel sensations in your body, you become mindful of them or aware of them. But that kind of mindfulness isn't enough. I mean, even a cat burglar has to be mindful. I'm not talking about people who steal cats, Jeff, don't worry. Cat burglar is someone who sneaks into buildings and steals jewels when the rich people are downstairs enjoying themselves. But that the burglar has to be very mindful of not to make a noise and other people coming, and where are the jewels. And so it's mindfulness itself isn't enough. And the word in Tibetan, the word for mindfulness, it really means memory, remembering. So like before, we did a little mindfulness of the breath. Remember, what is that meditation on the breath? We have to be mindful. It means we have to remember what it is that our mind is supposed to be focused on. And when our mind goes off following some interesting thought or other, some other kind of distraction, it's because we forgot what we're supposed to be keeping our mind on. Our mind, our memory, our remembrance. our mindfulness wasn't strong enough. So that, like weight training, you start off with 5 seconds of mindfulness, and then that can become 10 seconds and half a minute, and then a minute and 5 minutes, and it can be extended greatly. And so that's kind of the practice. But again, we usually don't have much time to sit on our cushion and practice mindfulness. And so then when we're going about with our regular daily activities, working, eating, meeting people, watching TV, whatever we do, in sleeping, everything, we can't be meditating on our breath. So there's a different kind of mindfulness that we need to practice in the 23 3/4 hours of the day that we're not sitting on a cushion watching our breath. So as we've seen, the most positive level of motivation is the bodhicitta, the determination to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So if we could do everything we do with that kind of motivation, then everything we did would become a cause of enlightenment, which would be unbelievably amazing, if we could do that, and would definitely bring us to enlightenment much more quickly than if we didn't do that. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche calls it bodhicitta mindfulness, just remembering bodhicitta all the time and to do everything with bodhicitta. So anyway, we're not going to go into it now, but and it's not just Lama Zopa Rinpoche. There are there are texts, Dharma texts that explain about this. But it's like every time you open a door, you think you're opening the door to allow sentient beings to escape from the lower realms. Every time you close the door, you think, now I'm closing the door to the lower realms, so sentient beings won't get reborn there anymore. So whatever we do when we're getting dressed, when we're bathing, when we're cleaning our teeth, when we're going to the bathroom, everything can be done with some kind of bodhicitta thought. So that's the bodhicitta mindfulness. And in terms of the kind of meditation we practice every day, we can divide that into formal and informal meditation. So formal meditation would be this one, just sitting on our cushion with our eyes closed and meditating on the breath or whatever. But not much of our day is spent doing that. So if that were the only time we created any merit, any positive karma, then that would, we'd almost never get to enlightenment, because then the rest of the time we'd be going around mindlessly creating negative karma, and that would just totally overwhelm any positive. Okay. The negative karma we created in the 23.5 hours, the rest of the day, would totally overwhelm any little positive karma we created sitting on our cushion. So the formal meditation we do for whatever time it is needs to be supported by the informal meditation the rest of our life. The rest of our life should be in harmony with it, not against it. But in order to be able to work with our mind most of the time, but we're not in formal meditation, we need the formal meditation so that we can really come to understand what our mind is and how it works, and sort of recognize its positive and negative aspects, and try to develop the positive ones and eliminate the negative ones. So the formal meditation is very important, and without it, we wouldn't be able to really practice the informal meditation effectively. So that's why it's good to establish some kind of daily practice. Now, a daily practice doesn't necessarily mean just like our sitting on the cushion meditating. Our daily practice can be everything we do, but when we're talking about establishing a daily practice, we're really talking about establishing formal practice that we try to do regularly every day. So this, this text by Lama Zopa Rinpoche about, the method to transform, and I can see that, is it too bright? The method to transform a suffering life into happiness. Anyway, you have the link. So that's something that we can do every morning, and we'll come to that next week or the week after, I'm not sure. So in order to establish a formal daily practice, it's good to have a room in your house that you can, not probably, most people, you're not going to, this is, where I live, this is kind of a Dharma center as well, Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive. So, we have the luxury of having this, I think previous owners called this the living room. And so we call it our shrine room, our gompa. So if you don't need a living room, you can make it into a shrine room like a gompa, then so much the better. But it's more likely you might be able to find a small bedroom that you could make into your meditation space, and like a sort of a sacred space in your house. But if you can't have that, then maybe you can get a corner of a room, a larger room, and screen it off, and make that space where you have your altar and some pictures of your teachers. And we'll talk about setting up an altar in a bit, but a space that's dedicated to your formal practice, where you have a little table where you can put your texts or your books that you're studying or reading, and your altar, your meditation cushion, a shelf with your Dharma books, which should be kept separate from your non-Dharma books. So like that. These days with Zoom, if you listen to the radio, you hear these guys, these journalists and people working from home. They always refer to they've got a closet that they set themselves up in. I guess it's easier to soundproof a closet than a room, but I think a closet might be a bit small to be kind of a little shrine room. Depends how big the closet is, I guess. Then what are you going to do with all your shoes? So it's good to have some kind of dedicated space. And then, so in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, Pabonka Rinpoche talks about the preparatory rights, and this is really given in the context of the practice of guru devotion, but we can isolate it from that to just consider these different preliminary practices. So he says there are 6. Cleaning the room or your meditation area, and arranging the symbols of enlightened body, speech, and mind. So, so that's setting up an altar. So, you know, the symbol of the enlightened body would be a statue of the Buddha, or a picture of your teacher, something like that. The symbol of a speech would be a text. So you could have a Lamrim book. This, you know, you could have a book that's probably better if it's something that you can just leave there. You're not accessing all the time. So it could be a small text on perfection of wisdom is a good one to have, or any you know, Lamrim text. And usually, I don't know if you can see, but you can see on the top of the shelf there's some long orange things. They're Tibetan texts wrapped in orange cloth. So, so I think I have one of them is the Lamrim Chenmo, the Great Lamrim of Lama Tsongkhapa, and the other one is the Tibetan text of this, Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. So it's they say if you die with those in your room, there's no way you get reborn in the lower realms. I don't know if it's that easy, but I have to make sure I die in this room, you know. Anyway, so that's the symbol of the enlightened speech, a text, and we don't just toss it up there, you know, you wrap it nicely in brocade or some nice clean cloth and keep it there respectfully. And then the symbol of mind is a stupa. So, I don't know if you can see. Can you see? You see, there's a little Maitreya. See, there's a big Maitreya there, and then there's this wicker box is full of holy objects, like pictures of deities and all kinds of holy objects. And on top of it, there's a small Maitreya, and just next to him, there's a stupa. So that Wendy brought that one back from Tibet. So we have this table with powerful holy objects, so that if you catch insects in your house, you want to liberate them outside. I mean, you wouldn't in this cold weather, but in the cold weather, there aren't that many insects in the house anyway. But you know, or you know, we with the cat or with the rabbits, we take them, circumambulate them around these holy objects, and you bless their mind that way. So these images have power to bless the minds of those who circumambulate them or come into proximity. So, but anyway, so if you don't have a stupa, you can get a picture of a stupa. That's fine too. So that's kind of the minimum, I guess, representations of body, speech, and mind of the enlightened being. A statue or a picture of the Buddha or a picture of the Buddha or your teacher, a text, and a stupa. So cleaning your room and arranging symbols of enlightened body, speech, and mind. So you don't arrange them every day, but maybe you could dust them, clean them every day. Then the second one is obtaining offerings without deceit and arranging them beautifully. Then the third one is adopting the 7-featured sitting position of Vairochana. So on a comfortable seat. So Vairochana is the Buddha of the fully purified aggregate or skandha of form. So when we talk about sentient beings, living beings, beings with mind, a sentient being has 5 aggregates, or 5, the Sanskrit word is skandha. So there's the aggregate of form, which is the body, and then there's the other 4 are mental skandhas or aggregates. They're called aggregates because they're aggregation of many parts. So the body has so many parts. That's a skandha of form, aggregate of form. Then there's the aggregate of feeling, then the aggregate of cognition, then the aggregate of compounding phenomena, and the aggregate of consciousness. So nearly all sentient beings have 5 aggregates. So the hell beings have 5 aggregates, hungry ghosts have 5 aggregates, animals have 5 aggregates, humans have 5 aggregates, demigods have 5 aggregates, they have a body and mind with these 4 divisions. And most of the gods or the celestial beings have 5 aggregates, but sometimes when usually we divide up cyclic existence into these 6 realms that I keep talking about, but you can also divide them into 3 realms. So the desire realm, the form realm, and the formless realm. So all sentient beings in cyclic existence in the, I'll put it another way. In the desire realm, there are the sentient beings in the 3 lower realms, the human beings, the demigods. And when it comes to the gods, the God realm, there are 27 levels of gods. So there are 6, the first 6 levels, the lower 6 levels are in the desire realm. So the desire realm has nearly all the sentient beings in the 6 realms. But then there are, in the form realm, there are 17 levels of gods. So these are gods who are absorbed in different levels of concentration, fully absorbed. So there's a book called Meditative States in Tibetan Buddhism, which goes into detail of all these form and formless realms. So generally, the gods who are born in the form realm, they have this awareness, oh, now I've been born. Then they go into the absorption and they remain in that absorption, sort of totally unaware of anything for a long time. And then when they're about to die, they have this awareness, now I'm dying. And then they get reborn somewhere else. So there are 17 levels like that according to different levels of absorption, meditative absorption. And then there's the formless realm, where there are deeper levels of concentration. There's infinite space, infinite consciousness, neither perception nor non-perception, and then the summit or the peak of samsara, peak of cyclic existence. So these are the formless realms. So the beings in those realms don't have they only have 4 aggregates. They don't have the aggregate of form, hence formless realm. So anyway, so like that. So during our lifetimes of Dharma practice, we gradually purify our 5 aggregates, our 5 skandhas. So there are different Buddhas that represent the 5 fully purified skandhas. So Vairochana is the Buddha. So I don't know if you've heard of the 5 dhyani Buddhas, so-called. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche says that's the wrong word to use. Everyone says the 5 dhyani Buddhas, but Lama Zopa says that's the wrong term. They're the 5 Buddhas of fully purified skandhas. So Vairochana is the Buddha of the fully purified skandha form. Then there's Amoghasiddhi and Ratnasambhava and Amitabha and Akshobhya. I can't remember which skandha those 4 represent, fully purified skandha of. But so Vairochana, the Vairochana position was, what can I say, heavily promoted by Mapa, the great translator who used to go from Tibet to India to take teachings from his guru Naropa and then bring them back and translate them into Tibetan. He was called Mapa the translator. And then he became the guru of the great Tibetan yogi Milarepa, who many people have heard of. So Mapa used to boast that, you know, his meditation position of the Vairochana position was, you know, no meditator could compete with him. He had the best meditation posture when he sat in the posture of Vairochana. I don't know what the others did, but anyway. So that's what we need to do. We'll come to that. The 7 featured sitting position of Vairochana. That's the 3rd thing we adopt. On a comfortable seat, after which you take refuge, develop bodhicitta and so on, while in an especially virtuous frame of mind. So if you've got Liberation in the palm of your hand, this blue one, there was an earlier edition that had a kind of yellow gold cover, but they redesigned it, so the page numbers are different. This is the 2006 edition. This is page 105, if you happen to have it. If you don't happen to have this book, you're crazy. I mean, this is like, this is the Bible. I think Geshe Tenley started teaching this like 10 years ago, I think, on Sunday mornings. And then he had different other things that he taught along the way, but I don't think he's finished yet, has he? No. He's up to maybe the bodhicitta part or the 7-point thought transformation. Or...
We're at 7-point thought transformation right now.
Yeah, so that's, well, it's getting there, but yeah, so after that, there's concentration. There's the 6 perfections, and especially the concentration and wisdom. So it's still a long way to go. So Geshe's been teaching it for 10 years. Okay, so that was the third one. The fourth one is petitioning the merit field. So the merit field, so a regular field is where you plant, crops. If you want corn, you plant them in a field and you get the corn, the result. So the merit field is we visualize Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and our teachers and all, the lineage lamas and important teachers in Nagarjuna and Asanga and, so many holy objects we try to visualize in the merit field. So I thought there might be a drawing of it in this book, maybe not. There's another translation of this text called Liberation in Our Hands. I've got it over there. That has a drawing of the merit field, and it has an outline with each one numbered, explaining who all the objects are. So it's pretty complicated. But it's a merit field because we plant the seeds of virtue by visualizing and petitioning this field of holy objects, this merit field, and the result we get is merit, positive energy, positive karma. That's the crop that we harvest, the merit field. Then the fifth preliminary practice here is offering a 7-limb prayer and a world mandala. So, you may be familiar, you often see offering the mandala, they do this mudra like this hand gesture. And we usually say it's better not to just do it with empty hands, but so often you see people hold their rosary when they're offering the mandala. And there's a longer prayer, longer mandala offering, there's a short mandala offering. And the 7-limb prayer is that's 7 meditations that contain the essence of purification and creation of merit. So I talked before about, to reach enlightenment, we have to study and think about, contemplate on and meditate on and realize all the steps of the path. So, steps of the path, where is it? So in the back of this book, there's this outline of the text. So these are all the steps that have to be studied and realized. According to this, there are 410 steps, but even within these steps, there are so many divisions. It'd be over 1,000 steps that we have to study, think about, meditate on, and realize. So, there are like these 3 levels of wisdom that we're supposed to try and develop. The wisdom of hearing, the wisdom of contemplation, and the wisdom of meditation. So the wisdom of hearing is when we hear something for the first time, hear a teaching for the first time. I mean, if you, when I went to my first meditation course with Lama Zopa Rinpoche back in 72 at Kopan Monastery, the very first teaching he gave, he gave a couple of introductory talks, and then he told us that the mind was beginningless. So, I mean, I'd never heard that before. I thought that sounds like complete nonsense. But at least I heard of it for the first time. So it's like, oh, okay. So that's a little tiny sliver of ignorance had been removed from my mind, that I'd heard that there's such a thing as a beginningless mind. You know, up to that point, I'd always assumed that there was only one life. You know, the mind only existed for this life. So that's an example of the wisdom of hearing. So you hear, and then there's so many other things that I heard first time about, you know, cyclic existence and 6 realms and refuge and karma, cause and effect, and bodhicitta. I mean, just about everything. You know, the first time you get a Dharma teaching, when you've never read or heard about it before, then there's so much wisdom of hearing you get. So, but then, you know, like I said, you think, oh, that's that can't be true, you know. So you kind of have doubt. So then you have to resolve the doubt. You know, if you don't resolve the doubt, doubt can be a very kind of crippling kind of mind, because you know, it's kind of wishy-washy. Oh, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, you know. And so you never come to a conclusion. So that's the wrong approach. You need to, as I think it's Aryadeva. I think Aryadeva said, the direct disciple of Nagarjuna, you know, the great Madhyamaka philosopher Nagarjuna, was either Aryadeva or Chandrakirti, who was one of the greatest exponents of Nagarjuna's philosophy. He came, you know, 300 or 400 years later. These great Indian pundits. I think Aryadeva, he said, those who doubt powerfully have the ability to realize the truth, but only if they investigate their doubts, something like that. So, you know, doubt is good, but it has to be investigated, and you have to come to a conclusion. So that conclusion that we come to by, you know, hearing, getting the wisdom of hearing of a new topic, and then we have doubt about it. So then we resolve a doubt and develop the wisdom of contemplation. We come to a clear intellectual conclusion that, oh yeah, this is right. You know, the mind is beginningless. That makes so much sense. You know, it's, or, you know, whatever this subject is, your perfect human rebirth or impermanence or refuge or karma, all these other lumrim topics that we have to hear about and then think about and come to a conclusion about. So, you know, if you've always believed that there's only one life, the mind only exists during this life, and at death it finishes, and it didn't come from anywhere at the beginning, it just somehow appeared at some point during gestation or in the womb, you know. I don't know when I don't think, you know, as medical students and as doctors, even delivering babies, I don't think anyone ever postulated when the mind actually begins. Western scientists, is it, you know, 3 months in the womb, 6 months in the womb? Is it, you know, the day before delivery? Or is the baby born without a mind, and then as soon as it comes out, you know, the mind starts ticking over in the brain? Or, you know, generally it's the mind is considered to be a product of brain activity. Nobody says it's like coming out of your index finger or something. It's usually considered there's some chemical and electrical activity in the brain that causes the mind to spring into action. But exactly when does that happen? I don't know if it's ever been postulated by Western scientists. Anybody know?
I don't think they really know when it starts, but I think they know it starts well before birth.
How do they know that?
Well, you have babies that are born a couple of months prematurely, and they certainly seem to have a lot of evidence of brain function.
Mm-hmm. Brain function and mind, presume.
Presumably mind.
This is like official MIT policy, or?
No. My opinion.
Steven Pinker's at MIT, isn't he?
Yep.
Didn't he publish a book arrogantly called How the Mind Works?
Well, he might have, I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. I don't think he really knows, from what I've heard of him anyway.
No, I think all they really know is maybe they see some evidence that the brain is actually functioning. That's about it.
Yeah.
You can't see consciousness.
No. Anyway, interesting. So, why am I talking about that? So, you get the wisdom of hearing that the mind is beginningless. So then you think about it. So this is a new concept. I don't really believe it, but let me think about it. Then you think about it, and maybe eventually you come to the conclusion, oh, yes, that's right. It makes much more sense that the mind is, comes from a previous life and didn't just begin at some point in this life. This life being from the point of conception. So then you come to that intellectual understanding. Oh, yes, the mind is beginningless. But then when you look at what you really believe, and there's this huge gap between what you instinctively feel and what you've always believed, what you've always felt, and this new understanding, this little glimmer, like a little candle in the wind, of understanding. So at that point, we need to close the gap by doing, so the wisdom of contemplation is analytical meditation. So, we talk about two kinds of meditation, that. The two kinds of meditation, analytical meditation and single-pointed concentration. Two kinds of meditation. So before we talked about formal and informal. Now this is analytical meditation, which is basically what I'm talking about when I'm saying developing the wisdom of contemplations, thinking about the teachings. When we hear these things, some of the ways to contemplate on these topics is to try and relate it to your own life. Is this teaching relevant to my life? Does it explain anything I can think of? Does it accord with my experience? Is it logical, and is it internally consistent? So we think about things in that way, and come to a conclusion. So analytical meditation is that single point of concentration is like what we did at the beginning, just trying to focus our mind on a single point, like on the breath. Or, later we do visualizations. We do visualize the Buddha and try to focus on that. So there are other different objects of concentration that we use to try and develop single-pointed concentration. So analytical meditation is developing wisdom contemplation. So we come to a conclusion by analyzing the teaching, and we come to the conclusion, yes, the mind is beginningless, but okay, I say that, but do I really believe it, And, you can see what we really believe by the way we lead our life, So we can intellectually ascribe to, like, a person who's been smoking for 20 years, you've seen all the pictures of black lungs and lung cancer and all these horrible things, and understands very clearly heart attacks and ulcers and all these, vascular disease, all these negative results of smoking, but can't give it up because the habit is too strong. So that people like that need to, you can put on a patch and all that, but it'd be better to do analytical meditation and close the gap between the habit, the bad habit, and the correct understanding. So anyway, what we do to develop the wisdom of meditation is we do analytical meditation, we come to the correct conclusion, and then with whatever single-pointed concentration we have, we focus our mind single-pointedly on the correct conclusion. So by repeating that process over and over again, analyzing, coming to a conclusion, focusing single-pointedly on the conclusion, gradually we build up the wisdom of the correct understanding, and that slowly displaces the ignorance that's opposite of that. So that's kind of the process, but the process needs to be enhanced to really develop the wisdom of meditation. To achieve the wisdom of meditation, we need to have what we call realization. I mentioned before, we need to study, think about, meditate on, and realize all these hundreds and thousands of steps along the path, each one. And the way this Lam Rim, the way this path to enlightenment laid out, is very logical. It's very logically set out so that one understanding naturally, organically kind of leads to the next and the next and the next, just like climbing a flight of stairs. The second step leads to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth, like that. So the steps of the path are arranged in a similar way. So we, when we embark on this journey that is following the Lam Rim, following the stage of the path to enlightenment, it's good to read the whole book, to know all the different topics that are covered. Just to have an idea of what it contains. Read it once, read it twice, look at the outline, just read the outline. And then also we have all these, what we call glance meditations, these little short prayers or different things that the Lamas have written that in 12, 15, 20 verses summarize the whole thing. So we come to that in Rinpoche's Transforming Suffering Life into Happiness. There's a glance meditation on Lam Rim there. So, last year we did the Foundation of All Good Qualities. That's a glance meditation on the Lam Rim that takes us through the whole Lam Rim in concise form. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche always says that we should And then, those of us who do Guru Puja, there's a slightly more extensive glance meditation on the Lam Rim, 84, 94, 104, maybe it's like 30 verses or something. Yeah, 35 verses that goes through the whole Lam Rim there at the end of the Guru Puja. So, Ribush says that it would be wonderful if we could read at least a glance meditation on the entire Lam Rim every day. Every time we read it, it implants, the whole path, on our consciousness. It plants the seeds of the entire path on our consciousness, and the benefits of doing that are, indescribable. So, so it's good to know the content of the whole thing, but when it actually comes to the hard work of practice, then we start at the beginning, and we take the first topic, Guru devotion, and then perfect human rebirth, and then impermanence and death, and the lower realms, and refuge, karma, and sufferings of samsara, 12 links, then the bodhicitta meditations. So we work on the beginning steps to realize them. And then when we've realized one, we go on to the next. So you've probably heard this, what is a realization? It's what the word means. It's when the intellectual understanding becomes real for you, when the wisdom completely displaces the ignorance, for which it's the antidote. So that comes through, developing these three wisdoms, hearing, contemplation, meditation. But the attaining a realization has to be supported by essentially two other activities. So Lama Tsongkhapa, the founder of our tradition, back in the 15th century, the Gelug tradition, even when he was very young, I think 10 years old, he did retreat on Manjushri, and he had visions of Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, and he was able to communicate directly with Manjushri, just like two people in a room. And so one time he asked Manjushri, what's the best way to attain realizations of the path? And Manjushri said, well, there are three things have to be done together. The seed of the realization, like the seed of a plant, is the main thing. The seed is meditating on the Lam Rim, meditating on the topic, whatever it is, perfect human rebirth or impermanence or beginningless mind, whatever it is. That's the seed of the realization. But that has to be accompanied. So the three things done together. Meditating on the topic is the seed of the realization, but that has to be accompanied by purification and creation of merit. So those two sides of the same coin. So it's like when we're planting a seeds in a field where we want to grow crops, you don't just go out to any old field and throw the seed around. You have to prepare the ground. So you have to get rid of all the obstacles, the weeds and the rocks and the unevenness and everything, and really make the dirt very clean, as clean as you can. And then you put in fertilizer and water, and then it needs sunshine and other minerals, maybe, whatever. Then when that field is ready, that external field, then you plant seeds, then the crops are going to grow nicely. So it's like that with the mind. So our mind has so much, negative karma, so many obstacles to understanding and realization. and it's so undernourished. So we have to enrich it with other practices. So here it says, offering a 7-limb prayer is one of the 5th preliminary practice. So the 7-limb prayer is a prostration, offering, confession, rejoicing, petitioning the teachers to live a long time, requesting them to give teachings, and then dedicating the merit. So those are the 7. So those 7 practices contain the essence of purification and creation of merit. And along with the offerings, the general offering, then it also says offering a world mandala. So that's, by offering mandala, then we create a lot more merit as well. So those activities are what prepare our mind for the realization. Then along with that, is, so the 4th preparatory rite here was petitioning the merit field, and then the 6th one is further petitions which follow the oral instructions made in order to be sure your mental stream is sufficiently imbued by your meditations. So Lama Tsongkhapa said, Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa the 3 things are meditating on the path, which is the seed of the realizations, purifying and enriching the mind in order for those seeds to ripen, and also praying to the Guru as oneness with the deity. So, and that's kind of the essence of, Guru devotion, that seeing that our Guru is actually an enlightened being, is a Buddha. And when we practice Tantra, we have these different meditational deities, whether it's Manjushri or Chenrezig or Tara, or one of the highest yoga tantric deities, Yamantaka or Chakrasamvara, Guya Samaja, Kala Chakra. Whatever the deity is that we practice, we see that there's no separation between that deity and our teacher. And, Lama Zopa Rinpoche once referred to the enlightened mind, the omniscient mind, the enlightened mind as Guru omniscient mind. So because, we're poor, ignorant, sentient beings, we can't communicate directly with the Buddha. We can't communicate directly with the enlightened mind. So the enlightened mind has to manifest in different ways, in different forms, according to our karma, in order to communicate with us. So one manifestation is as a human teacher, as our Guru. Another is in the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha, the founder, or the next one, Maitreya, who will be the founder of the next cycle of Dharma teachings, once Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings, which we're enjoying now, have completely disappeared. And manifesting as these different meditational deities. So, there are so many different kinds of sentient beings with so many different karmic potentials and so on. So, there are hundreds, thousands of different meditational deities, so that each qualified practitioner can find the right one to meditate on. And whatever these deities are, they're all manifestations of the Guru omniscient mind. So the Buddha manifests in all these different aspects. So in order to attain realizations, we need to pray to our teacher, to the Buddhas, past, present, and future, all the Buddhas, to our meditational deity, seeing them all as actually the one person, the enlightened mind, just appearing in different aspects. So if we do those activities together, meditating on the path, purification, creation, merit, praying to Guru as oneness with the deity, then that's the way to gain realizations of the path and make progress. So those are the 6 things: cleaning the room, arranging the altar, obtaining pure offerings, arranging them, adopting the 7-limb position, and taking refuge, generating bodhicitta, petitioning the merit field, offering 7-limb prayer and the mandala, and making further petitions according to the oral tradition. So we petition a lineage of teachers, for example. If you do Guru Puja, all these things are contained in there. The Guru Puja is essentially a glorified 7-limb prayer, greatly expanded 7-limb prayer. So, normally we, people who have received certain Vairochana initiations have a commitment to do it twice a month, but anybody can do it. We do it twice a month at the center or on Zoom these days. But it's a very powerful practice. And as Prabhupada Rinpoche says, it contains all the key points of accumulation of merit and self-purification. Okay, so that's as far as we got. But wait, there's more next week. So we generated positive motivation of bodhicitta at the beginning. We've been talking about Dharma teachings and these preliminary practices. So we've definitely created a lot of merit. And in order to protect that merit from being destroyed by anger, wrong views, other negative activities, in order to protect that merit, we dedicate it. We'll, reaffirm our motivation by offering the merit that we've created to all sentient beings. So think, because of this merit, now I quickly reach enlightenment in order to enlighten all sentient beings. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Hope it was okay. And
Thank you, Nick.
see you next week.